If your last name is on this list, your ancestor didn't just live through the dark ages of German record-keeping. They were labeled by it permanently, by neighbors who did not flatter. These 10 German surnames appear in church registers, parish books, and executioners' diaries from the 1300s to the 1600s. And most families who carry them today have no idea what they once meant. Some of them spent 300 years trying to outrun a word. Others look terrifying on paper and hide something almost ridiculous underneath. Stay until number 1, because that surname wasn't inherited, it was invented. A code word, written down by clerks who refused to record what the man actually did for a living. Historians only decoded the full pattern in the last few decades. Let's start with a name you already fear. Number 10. Kruger. Say this name near anyone who grew up in the 1980s, and they will picture a burned man with knives for fingers. Today, it sounds like the most frightening surname in the English-speaking world. But Kruger comes from the Middle Low German word Krug, meaning both jug and tavern. A Kruger was an innkeeper. The Kruger families concentrated across northern Germany, Mecklenburg, Pomerania, Brandenburg, where it remains one of the most common surnames in the country. In some regions, it marked the potter who threw the jugs instead of the man who filled them. Which means that in the North German villages of the 1400s, the Kruger house was the one you wanted to find at dusk. Documented parish records show Kruger households holding tavern rights a hereditary privilege, passed father to son. That made the family a village institution. Hollywood borrowed an innkeeper and turned him into a monster. The horror franchise is fiction. The beer, the hayloft, and the roof over a traveler's head were real. If your name is Kruger, your ancestor didn't hunt anyone in their sleep. He poured their drink and let them sleep it off upstairs. The next name you have known since childhood, and you never noticed how dark it is. Number 9. Grimm's. It is sitting on your bookshelf right now. Today it sounds like a fairy tale collection. But Grimm comes from Middle High German, Grimm, meaning fierce, stern, merciless. The same root that gave English the word grim. The name was pinned on hard judges, unbending fathers, men nobody argued with twice. It spread widely through Hessen and the Rhineland. Exactly where the most famous bearers were born? Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were born in Hanau in 1785 and 1786. Their collection, first published in 1812, is the reason the word Grimm now means fairy tale in a dozen languages. But the original stories were not soft. Cinderella's stepsisters cut off parts of their own feet. The published name promised exactly what the pages delivered. If your name is Grimm, your ancestor was the man in the village whose verdict was final. The next name was a weather report about a human being. Number 8. Sturm. When a village settled on this one, everyone already knew what walking into that man's house felt like. Sturm is German for storm, and no hidden meaning rescues it. It comes straight from Old High German Sturm, and it meant then what it means now. Sturm families appear across the German-speaking South Bavaria. Swabia. Austria, where nickname surnames based on temperament were especially common in the 13th and 14th centuries. Documented tax rolls from the late medieval period record Sturm households as established, propertied families. The nickname was a fixed identifier by then, meaning the temper that earned it belonged to a man already generations dead. That is the strange cruelty of a surname. It froze one ancestor's reputation at one moment and mailed it forward 700 years. Every Sturm alive today carries one medieval man's moods, and his children, who may have been perfectly calm, carried it first. The next name sounds like a panic attack. It turns out to be a piece of geography. Numero 7 Hass. On paper, this might be the harshest name on the list. 4 letters that read as pure hostility, because in modern German they mean hate. Here is the almost comical truth. Hass usually comes from one of 2 harmless roots, Hasso, an old Germanic given name, or Hase, the German word for hare, a nickname for a fast runner, or for a man the village thought a little timid. Hass families cluster in Hessen and along the Middle Rhine, the same regions where Germanic given name surnames took hold earliest. There is a documented pattern here that genealogists rely on animal nicknames were among the most common surname sources in medieval Germany. Alongside trades and places, hare, wolf, fox, bear all became family names. Somewhere in many Haas family trees stands not a hateful man, but a rabbit. If your name is Haas. 7 centuries of looking menacing on paper may rest entirely on a bunny. It is the perfect proof of this list's rule. The label and the story are 2 different things. The next name is heavier, but not for the reason you think. Number 6, angst. It is hard to imagine a heavier word to hand a child. In modern German, this one means fear itself. But angst goes back further than the emotion. It descends from Latin angustia, meaning narrow, tight, constricted. The same root behind English anguish and anxiety. Before it described a feeling, it described a shape. Angst families concentrate in the southwest Switzerland, Baden, and along the Upper Rhine. And in exactly those regions, marked terrain, tight gorges, pinched mountain passes, the narrow place where a valley closes to a doorway. Swiss and Alemannic place name records document this usage clearly. The family from the narrow pass became the Angst family. If your name is Angst, your ancestor was not the frightened one. He lived at the choke point, the doorway in the mountains that everyone had to pass through, and he watched them all go by. Not every name on this list gets off that easily. The next one is a trap. Number 5, schlecht. Imagine introducing yourself with a name that simply means bad. Not a dark meaning buried in old roots, the plain modern German word for bad, worn openly on a doorbell. When these families were named, around the 13th century, in Middle High German meant something entirely different. Straight, plain, level, honest. A schlecht was a man without tricks, the one you trusted with your harvest money. The neighbor whose word closed a deal. Schlecht families are documented across Swabia and Bavaria, where the older meaning survived longest in dialect. The German language drifted. The word slid from plain to plain poor to poor quality to bad. The name stood still. 7 centuries later. An honest man's badge reads like a warning label. If your name is Schlecht, your ancestor was called straight by people who meant it as the highest compliment they had. Remember that mechanism, because the next name guards your money while looking like a criminal. Number 4, Diebold. Millions of Americans type a pin into this surname every week without noticing. Dieb is the German word for thief, so Diebold reads like thief with attitude. It is nothing of the kind. Diebold is a worn-down form of the old Germanic given name Theobald, built from Theud, meaning the people, and Bold, meaning bold. Bold among the people. A leader's name, not a burglar's. The same root gave us Dietrich, Dietmar, and the French Thibault. Diebold families spread through Alsace, the Rhineland, and Switzerland, following the Germanic given name belt. Then comes the documented punchline. In 1859, Charles Diebold founded a safe and vault company in Cincinnati, Ohio. That firm became the manufacturer behind American bank vaults and automated teller machines. A name that looks like thief ended up guarding the country's cash. If your name is Diebold, your ancestor was named for boldness, and history repaid the joke with interest. The next name earns its darkness honestly. Number 3, Kummer. Some medieval nicknames were jokes. This one was not. Kummer means grief in German, and when it was given as a nickname, it marked a man the village associated with sorrow, a widower, a man who buried his children. Someone misfortune visited often enough that it became his label. Kummer families appear in Saxony, Silesia, and Brandenburg, in registers kept by clerks who wrote people down exactly as they were seen. Some Kummer lines trace instead to an older sense of the word, a heap of rubble or broken ground, the household living beside the ruin. Both readings are documented, and without parish records, a family cannot always tell which line it belongs to. But for many lines, the grief reading is the honest one. Church registers were not sentimental. They recorded what the neighbors already said out loud. If your name is Kuma, someone in your line was seen in his hardest season, and the name outlived the sorrow that made it. The next name describes something worse than death by medieval reckoning. Numero 2 Ellen. Medieval German had a word for the worst thing that could happen to a person, and it was not dying. It was being cut off from home. Today, Elend means misery, but the older form, Elilenti, meant literally the other land. To be Elend was to be an exile, a stranger living among people who owed you nothing, with no kin to speak for you and no lord obliged to protect you. The misery meaning grew out of the exile meaning, because in a world organized entirely around kinship and locality, being far from home and being wretched were the same condition. There was no third option. Eland families and the place name Eland both appear in the Harz region and in Thuringia, marking settlements founded by people who arrived from somewhere else and stayed. Now hold that against what happened next. Every German family that boarded a ship at Hamburg or Bremen for New York became, by the oldest meaning of the word, exactly this: strangers in the other land, for at least a generation. If your name is Elland, your ancestor arrived somewhere as a stranger and refused to leave. This name just says out loud what every immigrant family lived. And now, number one. Number 1, Freimann. In 1573, a Nuremberg executioner named Franz Schmidt began a diary. Over the next 45 years, he recorded 394 executions in it, in careful, steady handwriting. His neighbors would not drink from his cup. His children could not marry into respectable families. His trade was legally branded unehrlich, dishonorable, which barred him from guilds, from civic office, and from ordinary social life. Executioners lived outside the town walls, and their children married almost exclusively into other executioners' families. So, when a clerk had to record a christening, and the father's trade was executioner, writing the real word beside a Christian name felt impossible. Here is the secret. Across the German South, the registers used a courtesy term instead. They wrote Freimann, the free man. It was the politest word the German language ever invented for its most feared job, and in those registers it functioned as a code. Everyone reading it knew. That is the mechanism modern genealogists reconstructed only in recent decades. By cross-referencing southern German parish books against municipal executioner appointment records, the entries line up. Register to register, town to town. 2 cautions, and they matter. Not every Freimann descends from an executioner. The name also marked genuinely free peasants who owed no lord their labor, and that is the more common origin overall. But in the southern registers of the 1500s and 1600s, in the specific parishes where the trade was hereditary, the word was doing other work. And Franz Schmidt himself. After 45 years and 394 executions, he petitioned the emperor to restore his family's honor. In 1624, he won. The man behind the code word died respectable. His name made it back inside the walls. If your name is Freimann, your ancestry isn't a family story. It's a clerk's decision, preserved in ink, to protect a child from a word. 10 surnames. 10 threads leading back through plague years, mountain passes, tavern doors, and register books kept by men who wrote down exactly what they saw. Devils, storms, exiles, innkeepers, and almost none of them meant what they seemed to. A surname is not a verdict. It is a fossil, one frozen moment of how a single ancestor was seen, carried forward by people who forgot the moment and kept the word. Your name isn't decoration, it's a record. Drop your surname in the comments and tell me, did you know your own, your neighbor's, your grandmother's maiden name? From any country and any language. The most requested names become future episodes, so your comment is a vote.